founders, it's Christy Bareijsza, and I'm your catalyst to finding her. Let's get started. Hey founders, I'm Christy Bareijsza, and welcome to Finding Her. Once again, here we are. And don't forget, I am not a therapist. I am not a life coach. Hell, I am not even a psychologist. I am just a girl trying to figure her shit out. And just have landed in places I never thought I'd be, both professionally and personally in my life, where here I am. And as we know, I will continue to make mistakes. And I'll definitely keep making more. But the bottom line is it keeps life interesting. It's fucking hilarious. And we get great stories out of it. So it's a win-win for everybody. But don't forget, the relatable stories that I have here are for entertainment purposes only. We protect the innocent. We protect the guilty. And if you remember them different, oh well, it's my story to tell. But as I say, to make a very long story short, I am here more than anything else to be a catalyst for change and to work with you founders as we go through life together and laugh, cry, get excited, see things differently in a way that just makes a difference. And that's what Finding Her is all about. So let's get started on the next topic. We talked about building wealth, which I talked a lot about because I know I can talk about money. And it's a really important subject because it does make the world go around, but it's done in a way that it's something that flows. It's not something that's stagnant. It's something that helps you get to the next level. It doesn't define you. And with that, there was a couple different topics that we addressed, and I just want to give you a quick reminder of them because as we go through each episode and as we go through each stage of Finding Her, it's really important to understand that each stage builds on each other. And I've done it in a way that you want to go from step to step to steps to step and not always necessarily bounce around because it's something that really is what you build on, not necessarily something that you just learn one lesson. Because as we all know, none of us are perfect. And we are people that, are always a work in progress. And we are women and men that are here for a reason, which means you are smart enough to know that expansion is a great thing. It's real. It's exciting. And part of it is just understanding the process and just growing from it. So the first thing that we talked about last time was money is a medium of exchange. Spending is required to create abundance and cannot be a source of fear, stress, or limitation. So understanding it's water. It flows, now that song's in my head. That's always on TikTok. But it's something that comes in and out, and you have to use it to work for you and not use it to work against you or not have it in a way that it's basically a stagnant feeling or a stagnant weight that is stopping you from living life and stopping you from expansion. So that's very, very critical that you look at it as something that flows. And when you look at it, it flows, and look at it as more of a transaction, you're going to use it in a way that's different versus trying to hoard it all in a savings account for that rainy day. As we all know, tomorrow is never promised. So I'm not saying go blow it on red and at the blackjack table, or what am I saying, the roulette table. But it's also one of those things that you want to be smart about it and how you spend and what you're spending on, and don't just wait. Life is short. Second thing was opening banking, credit, and investment accounts and how to do that, and educating yourself in a way that you know what your resources are, you are trusting in yourself, you're trusting in others that are going to help you to get where you need to get, whether it's a different resource, a blog, understanding new systems and understanding where your money is so you're not being taken advantage of, or not falling into circumstances that you were trusting of somebody and they did something wrong with your hard-earned money. It's one of those things of when you are accountable for yourself and accountable for the things that you do and educating yourself and really learning how to work with your finances and your wealth, it is super important to take that into all aspects. And that's the same thing too if you're growing a business, if you are expanding your business, if you are going back into corporate, if you are going back into rebuilding your education or starting an education in some field that you haven't been in thus far, or, you know, in a field that you need to take steps further, applying for the right loans, utilizing the fact that there are women-owned support, you know, whether it's a women-owned small business support, or there's grants, there's loans, there's educational scholarships that are out there. You just have to look for them. And people are using them. You should be the one that's using them. But if you don't look, nobody's going to hand you anything. So you got to do the work. You got to do the research. You got to analyze. You got to be smart. You got to ask questions. And especially, too, with the SBA, which is the Small Business Association for the United States, there are offices in every major city. And if there's not an office in that city, then there's phone calls, there's people you can contact, there's direct contact. So you're not just calling an 800 line, there's actual humans that are there that can help you through this and offer advice. Because yes, it's not always that easy. And I'm not saying that you should learn everything yourself. You have to ask for help and ask an expert in that. But it's also one of those things too, where you're able to use those resources wisely, and they're out there. So look for them. And if you can't find them, shoot me a DM. I will look for them and I will help you find them. Or I will put you in touch with a person that can work with you on that too, because it's very important, because when people ask for help, you want to help. And I'm not saying we're doing the work for you. So understand there's the difference between that. It's you're doing the work yourself, but sometimes you need assistance, you know. So I'm all here for it. And I'm sure that any person that you talk to that is in that support realm is going to be equally as excited and eager to help you too. So don't forget that. Don't get in your own way. Then the next thing we talked about is how to spend lean, strategic, and meaningful. Use a fucking coupon, okay? Use a discount. Use a loyalty card. Use all of that stuff. It's not beneath you. Go shop on a consignment site like The RealReal or any of the other ones. Why not? Why not? Period. So if you're above it, then you're going to go burn through your money, and we're in the wrong podcast right now. But, you know, money comes and goes, and money, you know, flows in, flows out. And the smarter you are about it and the more strategic you are, it just makes sense. And even if you have all the way, listen, maybe you won the lottery and you have $1 billion in your account right now, you can still burn through that shit. Period. Done. It's absolutely possible. So the smarter you are from the beginning, the more strategic you are, you know, understanding those values. And honestly, it's a win-win for everyone, because especially those loyalty programs, those brands, those companies want you to go with them. And when you're getting those, you know, free items and things like that, it's because you've already invested in that company and they're investing back in you. And it's a way to say thank you. And it's a great thing. I mean, if you can get something at a discount, like, listen, like I said, I love TJ Maxx. I would love for them to endorse me. It's my favorite fucking store. And it's one of those things where I get excited when I get a discount. Like, I tell people, like, I have a coat that I love. This coat, the tag is in there. It was $1,400. I paid $200 for that coat. I adore that coat. I get more compliments on that coat. And then the fact that I spent $1,200 less than I would have in the store, I love that coat 15,000 times more. Absolutely. Because it's about, for me, that value. It's about, like, it's smart. And, you know, some people might think it's gauche, and the people that think it's gauche are the people that are full of shit. And you know what? And I'm also, too, I don't gatekeep. I will tell someone, and someone says, I love that coat and I adore that, I will say, this is where I got it, this is what I spent on it, and this is what it is. And you know what? If it's last season or it's whatever the case is, it might be one of those situations that might not be there, but I'll be like, ooh, it might not, but try here, try there, try there. Or they might find something else that's equally as fabulous for that kind of discount. And you know what? We need to normalize that, okay? Sample sales, all this, normalize it. Because I'm sorry, but why do you want to spend more money? Understand, like I said, there are exceptions, that there's certain things that maybe you can only get full price, and there's only, you know, whatever the case is. But it's one of those things where we need to normalize being smart about your money as a woman. And that's it. There's nothing else to that. The next thing we talked about was sourcing organizational and administrative support. So obviously finding, people that you trust, people that are experts, people that are professional in their industry, that have, whether they're signing an NDA, they have, just certain restrictions that when they're working with your money or your business and things like that, that they're not just, helping you out and it's chaos and all that stuff. Or in positions where they can take advantage because you're not watching over, or that you have to watch everything over like a hawk. That's not always the answer, and that's not always a great thing. It's more about having the ability to delegate to others things that might be administrative tasks or bookkeeping support that help with, paying things in a way that are smarter, that maybe will create more liquidity in your accounts, that maybe will allow you more discounts because of the pay schedule or the way to pay things, that they'll see things differently that possibly could work in your favor, and there's more value to it. And there's also the consistency, or helping to pay things on time that helps build your credit, whatever the case is, that they're there to support you, and those roles are there where a lot of times people say, well, I can't afford to pay them, I can't do this, I don't have the money, da-da-da. Sometimes it's working smarter in a way that, yes, it might cost you a little bit more money in the beginning, but in the end, you end up saving money and you end up saving time and different resources. So there's a win-win to that. You just have to look at it that way, which is being smarter versus working harder. And then the last thing that we talked about in the last episode was obtaining financial independence to create balance, strength, and options. Make your own fucking money, period. Because when you make your own money, no one will tell you what to do with it. They can't tell you what to do with it. And it also sets a different standard. When you're in a relationship, when you're in a business, when you're in a partnership, when you are in any type of scenario, if you come into that scenario with the ability to be self-sufficient, financially sufficient, and whole, where you are not a dependent, you are not someone that's dragging somebody else down, it shifts the respect. It shifts the weight. It shifts the energy, where it changes that other person's perspective on you, because you've now created value, because you come in as a soul value, where I've seen so many relationships where one partner has made all the money and the other partner has nothing. And that one partner is the one that controls everything, that calls the shots. They do everything because they have all the power. Okay? You have no power and you're stuck. And you're stuck under their control, and that's not okay. When you have your own money, you have your own control of your own destiny, you have your own control of your own decisions. And you may make decisions differently, whatever the case is, but the bottom line is you still have the flexibility to do what you want to do, and that changes those dynamics in the relationship, and it changes the perspective, and it's so different because you are no longer in a position where you can consider yourself a victim, consider yourself not accountable for things. When you become accountable for your own self, it changes who you're with, it changes your relationships, and they make them more positive, more balanced, more sustainable. They'll have a longer shelf life because it's about growth and it's just not about dependency. So these are all the things that we talked about. And when you get to that point where you've started over, you've forgiven yourself for all the bullshit, you've become accountable. Now you've learned how to kind of build, your wealth, you're at that point now where you're like, okay, I'm starting to get things together. I'm educating myself. I'm starting to create a plan. Well, as I'm creating a plan, I've got a little bit of money in the door. What am I going to do now? I'm going to brand myself. So it's a huge topic for me because this is what I love and this is what I do. But it's just, branding is just not just revolving around business and kind of an image. It's about just being your own personal brand yourself. And it is so, so critical. And let's start talking about it because a quote's coming. Of course it is. Sorry. I know I'm corny. Okay, ready? Here it is. The quote is, real confidence looks like humility. You no longer need to advertise your value because it comes from a place that does not require validation of others. So, I actually have I've had issues with this, where I have had to build my brand because of respect, and felt in the past that if someone didn't see my value and didn't see my expertise in the way that my brand looked, I had to fucking shove it down their throat. Okay? I don't do it anymore. So let's talk about the delicate balance of branding, because let me tell you, this topic hits home for me big time. So one of the first things I want to discuss is how to believe in your value and expertise. And how you do it is you develop core pillars, and you're going to create a tangible marketing vision that's going to support them. So what did I just say? You want me to say it in English? I'm going to say it in English. Basically, I have spent years of just having to get respect by shoving what I do and justifying my value, my expertise down people's throats. Okay. And it's been a common theme for me. I don't know why. It's a lesson that I had to learn. And with that lesson, because I sell an intangible service, my brand as an event professional is everything for me, because that's what in essence is tangible, even though it's not. You can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, whatever the case is. But it's one of those things that it sets the standard for what people see, understand, and why they would hire me or my services or whatever the case is, with a job, a gig, whatever the case is. And that's where you have to believe in yourself and create a structure around it, an image that's both physical, that's visual, that's basically day-to-day life, that is going to support what that end goal is for either you personally or for your business or for your career. So that being said, what does that look like? What is that vision? Where do you see yourself? So like when you envision yourself in the future of your dream job or your dream, life, what does that look like? And what that looks like, you have to now go and take steps backwards and say, how do I get there? From an image perspective, from, a brand meaning, what type of item you supply, whether it's a service, whether it's a physical item. What is that is going to get you from point A to point B? And what does that image tell you? From the color to the style, to the font, to the social media campaigns, to the focus, to the education, to any of that support and content is going to be so critical in getting to that end result in a way that communicates to you and I and every other person here that this is the message, loud and clear. No questions about it. So that is not easy. And sometimes it takes a little work. And sometimes you'll even see major companies rebrand and try to kind of shake things up. And it's interesting because if it's done right the first time, even when they try to rebrand it, for some reason it kind of goes back to the old original one, which is I'm thinking of Pepsi, I'm thinking of Coke, I'm thinking of all of those different, especially in the beverage companies, I've seen a lot of, branding where they try to modernize it. And then all of a sudden everyone turns around and that modernization kind of goes back to what the original one. It might be slight tweaks here or there. And sometimes I wonder if they do it where they go so far left just to see if they're able to do it and they end up back in the middle, or that was the plan all along to get people to get to the middle and they went so far left to do it. So I always wonder, in kind of case studies, if that's the case. But it's one of those things where it just has to tell that story. And for me, when I chose my brand for my company, I had a designer actually put something together, and obviously it's called the red carpet. She had a logo that actually is a carpet, and I had that logo designed in 2000. Well, I started the company in 2001, so it was probably 2000 or 2001. So this is 24 years ago, and I still have the same logo. It's gotten a little bit, it's gotten a little bit thinner. She's gone on a diet. She's gotten a little bit, as technology has changed and images have changed, and we're able to kind of do more with the image. She's gotten a little bit prettier, but in essence, she is still the same logo, and that's and people see it and they remember it, and it's kind of cool. Because it's also something that represents me, but it's also something that when it was thought of back in the day, I thought of, when I was naming the company, what colors create what? What fonts make you feel a certain way? What words are going to portray what my image is? And, for me, with red, it's that passion, it's that energy, it's that excitement. Those are the things that you feel when you're doing an event. My 3 taglines are, isn't that funny? Just kidding. Sophisticated, innovative, memorable. So, yeah, I almost forgot them. But sophisticated, meaning I'm only doing high-end events. I'm not fucking around with, stupid shit. Innovative. One of the things that I've always prided myself on, and, as experiential marketing and experiential events have gotten more popular, I have always done events in a way that is a full sensory experience. And I talk about it a lot where, yes, there's a word for it now. It's a term that people just throw around. But a full sensory experience is a full sensory experience. That when you walk in the room, you smell something, you taste something, you feel something, you hear something. I mean, you smell something. Like there's all of these things that are coming that are going to hit you from all aspects versus you walking in a room and saying, "Oh, that's pretty." And for me, it's the placement of the bars and the tables and the lounge furniture and the type of material that's used. Maybe the linens will have a certain feel to them, and the couches might have a velvety feel to them, where you're feeling, you're touching, you're tasting. The food is going to have a certain. It's not just going to be a random choice in food. If there's a theme that's happening, it's going to have that experience that's tied into it. The lighting might be dim. There might be a candle that we use or a sensory or a scent that's in the room that's going to create another element. I've done events where it's been supposedly raining. So we've worked with lighting to do the thunder and the lightning that's shining on. It's the images will go on the walls, but you'll also hear in the background the actual thunderclap. And, it's that image that takes people in a place, or that experience that takes people in a place that when we're working with the client and their brand is XYZ, we're taking that brand and bringing it to life through a full sensory experience. And that's so important to me. So I digress because I'm talking about events, and that's what I do. But it's one of those things where the color, the name, the passion that's tied into it kind of goes into what I'm selling as an intangible product. So with that sophisticated, we've got that. We've got the innovative, which is the full sensory experience, and then the memorable. You're going to fucking memorize shit. And, I'm always asked that question. I've asked that question, what's the most memorable event you've ever had? And it's an easy answer for me. And I'm sure, here, if we've got time, I'll tell the story. So one of my favorite events was for the History Channel, which is A&E Television Networks. And they asked me to do an event. They were launching a lot of their new programming, and one of them was an event called The Story of Us, which is the story of America. Now, we had attendees from all over the world that were coming to view the documentary and experience the event and be at the conference and do a lot of the participate in the launching of the new programming for the television station. So, or I should say the network. And with that, because we were doing the story of us, I thought there was no, and we were in New York City, there was no better place to be than Ellis Island since it took place on Ellis Island. You know, and it was a no-brainer for me because the experience of watching something and actually being there is something that's not common, which is, and to experience it in a way that the people that you were watching on that video hundreds of years ago, it's the same exact steps, the same exact location, the same exact, I mean, the building hasn't changed. That's something that's really, really unique. So with that, we had our guests basically leave from Battery Park to get on a boat, which the boat took them around the Statue of Liberty, which was really, breathtaking in itself to see her in all of her glory. And most people haven't. I mean, I'm going to... I am from New Jersey. I lived in New York. I lived in Jersey City, where I opened my my balcony door and I faced the Statue of Liberty. Like she's right there. Like I could have a full conversation with her. I've never been in the Statue of Liberty. I've never been to the top of the Empire State Building either. So I am most people. And I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I should lie about it, but as I told you, I'm genuine and authentic. I can't fucking lie. So I've never been. So with that, the boat went around the Statue of Liberty in all her glory. We didn't go in it, so that's why I've still never been into it. And honestly, the first time I'd been to Ellis Island was for this event when I did the site inspection. But I got to see it, so whatever. Whatever got me there, so I'm there. So that being said, they went around the Statue of Liberty, and the boat came and docked at Ellis Island, which we had a cocktail reception at the front lawn, which overlooked all of New York City, which was quite breathtaking, especially from downtown going all the way up. And it was one of those just clear, beautiful summer days where people were just so enamored and all they could do is take pictures. And that was just the start of the event. So, they're on a great, boat. They're enjoying the Hudson. They're seeing something so memorable. Then they see this view that is just, world famous. And the food is great. So they do that. And then as the cocktail reception's over, they're invited inside into the lobby level of Ellis Island, which they had seen now a snippet of the documentary, which is showing, all this raw, old footage that was found of all of these, immigrants eager to come to this beautiful country they're just going to start something new, like they're having this new life and they're excited. And it wasn't just that. There's, infirmaries there. There were people that were sick. An interesting thing that I learned was not everybody came through Ellis Island. So if you were of a certain stature, like a Rockefeller or an Astor, or whatever the case is, you went straight to New York City. Like you went to the main island. You didn't stop at the pit stop over there in Ellis Island. So, there was an interesting, take on it from the good, the bad to the different, levels of privilege. So they're learning that in the main area, the main lobby, which basically, you see a lot of the bookkeeping of when the families came in. And interesting enough, on my mother's side, they were actually able to find my maternal grandmother's family that came over from Holland, because my great-grandmother was one when she arrived here in the United States. So when I was able to see the entire family, the signatures and things, and there were 13 of them, which was really, really interesting to me because why do I always get emotional with this stupid stuff? But you get to see people you've never met that they are the sole reason you're here. If she never had my grandmother would have never had my mother would have never had me, so you get to see and you get to connect with history in a way that is unassuming, which is that innovative, experiential, branded element that you can only get at Ellis Island. So here they go to see that, and I can stop being emotional, and because I'm going to do it again. And as they do that, what people had done is, and I might be saying it wrong, I think it's called the Great Hall. It's been a minute. But when they got off the boats, they went upstairs to this Great Hall, which have these dome ceilings, and that's actually where they would pass through sign the paperwork, get their names, and then they'd go through there, and then they were American citizens. So that's the spot that everyone literally had to walk through in Ellis Island that ever came to this country. So as we watched a little bit of that video, everybody was invited upstairs, and what we had done was we had this huge seated dinner. The sun had just gone down. Because of the dome, we had the ceiling illuminated in these deep blues with these twinkling star gobos, which are like a pattern of stars that were on the sky. So they looked like, as they were looking up, looking at the sky. We had pin spots on all the tables and these beautiful centerpieces that were red, white, and blue, but not red, white, and blue in a cheesy way. It was a very delicate combination of it that represented really just being, you know, the colors of America, as well as around the room were all of these flags from all the different countries in the world, which obviously the American flag was just slightly bigger, but every single flag was illuminated perfectly. And the tables were illuminated, and the sky was twinkling, and music was playing in the background. And literally, as people walked upstairs, their breath went, and when I saw that, I got equally as sentimental, because I know that little thing that I did for them will be passed on in conversation from them to their children, to their grandchildren, to whatever, where I have now created that memorable experience where they're going to remember that dinner for the rest of their lives, because not only did they have a dinner that might have been a corporate dinner or whatever the case is, it was a dinner that told a story that gave you chills down your back through that full sensory experience. And that's what fucking branding is, okay? So what is wrong with me sometimes? Sometimes I wonder. But that's what branding is. So that's that impact. So whether it's you, a fucking product, your service, whatever it is, that's what you got to do with everything. Because especially now, we're in a state, in a world that it's bigger, better, faster, sensory overload, completely inundated with all of this shit. What sets you apart? You know, so like for me, that example that I told, that story that I told, that obviously you can connect the dots, and this is what sets it apart. But also, you know, looking at things in a way, saying, how can I bring this story to life? And that's what branding is. You are bringing your story, whatever it's going to be, to life. And who are you bringing it to? So one of the first things I like to talk about is understanding your demographic and the most important way to build influence. So, for instance, founders, when I first started this project, I thought my demographic was solely going to be Gen X women that have, you know, 40s, 50s, maybe even early 60s, have been through shit, have been through life, kind of where I am right now. And that's who my demographic is going to be. Ironically, I was wrong, because I realized as I started talking about this project and talking about when I was just, you know, in the stages of kind of coming up with these ideas, things that were resonating with me, deep diving, really understanding what I was trying to do, how I was going to do this, and like molding this together, because this was a project for me that I didn't look for it, it came to me. So divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, it was something that I wasn't looking for. I didn't know this was what I was supposed to do. It found me, and when it found me, I took it, I ran with it. And I ran with it because it inspires me. Sometimes I go over that. Sometimes, this is what I do. I worry more about you than me, and then I don't always tell the whole story. So for me, you know, I need a legacy. That's always been kind of my passion. I'm an Aquarius. Some of you probably know that, and why I launched this on February 5th. But it's something for me that I've always had this thing where I always want to make a difference. That's part of my brand, is impacting people. I don't have children. I don't have something that I would consider a legacy. So what does my legacy look like for me? And that was always something that, yes, I do events, I touch people's lives and things like that, but am I making a difference? And when this project kind of came to fruition and found me, it kind of fulfilled my need of that void of saying, I can help. And I can do it in a way that's different. And I can do it in a way that's genuine, that's authentic. That leaves a legacy in a way that if I'm able to help one person, I'm good. And yes, I've probably helped people in my lives. And I know that people come up to me and say, you've helped me so much and all this stuff. It's different. It's just different than what this project is, I guess. I mean, I will always help people. I want to help people. I continue to help people. That's what I love to do. That makes me feel good, to do good things for other people. I love that. But doing it in a way that makes a bigger difference is, and especially for women, because it's something that's kind of touched my soul in so many ways of being one, having those challenges, understanding, roles in life and understanding how things have changed and understanding how even, from a political standpoint, the support, how it's changed and rights and things. It became so loud to me that I had to get involved in it. So when I originally looked at the demographic, I thought it was going to be one. And what I came to realize is it wasn't. There were so many people, especially in younger generations, that I thought might not be, I wouldn't be relatable to. I'm relating more with them than I am with my own generation, which is interesting. So you have to be open to all aspects of it and what you think your demographic might be on paper or from a project standpoint. Once the project gets going or once, whatever you're trying to do gets going, it changes. So as it changes, you kind of have to go and work with the flow. Sometimes it becomes more difficult because it'll become a little bit more work, because how one generation might communicate or how you're able to get that message across or how you're able to promote that message might be different than the others. So now you have to do a little bit more work where it might be an email mailer, it might be a TikTok, it might be an Instagram, because people don't, this demographic doesn't look at Instagram, this demographic doesn't look at TikTok, this demographic only deals with emails, this demographic, so there's so many other aspects of how to get it out there. It's more work, but the return on investment with it is far more exciting and far more appealing, because you're now able to intertwine generations that have purposely been divided. So, yeah. So that's why knowing your demographic is very important, but also knowing that your demographic can change. So if it's able, so if it changes, you change with it. I don't want you to delineate from what the brand is and what your initial research is and what you're showing as what you are. But what I am saying is to be open to modify yourself slightly to be more inclusive. So take that and sit on it. So the next thing is and that's kind of what it goes into, is redefining your image and kind of creating marketing goals and eliminating those elements that don't align. So kind of what I'm talking about right now is that you have your image, you have your strategic brand, you have your strategic kind of plan that's around what you are, whether you're launching yourself as a creator, you're launching a product, you're going back into the workforce and you're trying to find a job in a specific field. Everything has its own brand and its image. You're trying to sell a regular product, and that product has its own image, whether it's you, whether it's the product itself, whatever the case is. What it always looks like in the beginning and what it looks like in the end when you're ready to go to launch or it's been made public, there's always going to be modifications. So you have to be open to seeing as you kind of, I'm a big proponent of kicking shit around. So even before I started this podcast, I would kick this shit around to people without knowing what I was doing. Like, they didn't know what I was doing. What I would do is I would ask random fucking questions because I also know how people are. And I know how my friends are. If I ask them a question on something that I'm working on and they know that I'm asking them that specific question, they don't want to hurt my feelings because they care about me, they love me, whatever the case is. They're going to answer differently than, not all of them, half of them will answer differently than if I said something that they didn't know what I was talking about. Meaning, before I started this podcast, before I was going to do a podcast, I would walk around to people, different generations, ages, men, women, everybody. And I'd be like, so, do you watch podcasts? Do you watch this? Do you do that? Like, why did you watch that podcast? Why did you, like, and they start talking because it's not in a way that it's like, I'm not interrogating. I'm asking questions that we've had conversations about, or like, well, when you listen to a podcast, is it 40 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour? Like, oh, well, I usually listen to a 30-minute podcast. Why? Well, I listen to it because I go to work and my commute is 30 minutes. So I listen to one there, I listen to one back. Okay, cool, great. Then another person say, well, I only listen to an hour. I'm like, why? Well, 30 minutes isn't enough time. An hour is more of what it is. I'll listen to it while I'm cleaning the house, or I'll listen to it while I'm, doing A, B, C, or D. Oh, okay. But you think 30 minutes is too short? Yes. Okay. Why? Well, because I'm just getting into it. And then I feel like I need to do da-da-da-da-da. So I started asking this question. So while I was doing that, I'm pulling in the demographic. I'm pulling in the ideas. I'm pulling in the concepts. I'm pulling in like little things, and then I just kind of write them down on a page. And as I would continue to write them down in these different questions that I was asking, or like, images, or like I was talking to people about, how do you feel about finding her? Well, what about men? I get it, but I think right now what's needed is a platform for women. An all-inclusive platform for women. Because her is her. And yes, okay, don't at me with the pronouns. Don't at me with that shit, okay? Because that's not what the point is. My point is that women, if you want to choose to call yourself something that, they, this, and I'm perfectly fine with that, do you. That's not a problem. But what it is I'm saying as women, we need a platform. And we need a platform that doesn't divide. Because I had this conversation last night. There's been so many movements, there's been so many fucking platforms that what happens is it's a great movement, it's a great platform, it's a great value advocate for women. And then what women do, or what larger groups do, is they take that large platform and they start breaking it down and segregating it. It fucking pisses me off. And I'll tell you why. Because there's strength in numbers. Period. And every story is different. Every race is different. Every ethnicity is different. Every religion is different. But we all still have commonalities. And those commonalities is what makes us great and what makes us strong. And if we focus on what we are together versus what makes us different, there's a different perspective, and there's different ways to get across a better message, a better advantage in where you want to go, a better support system, a better platform for creativity, innovation, inclusion, all of these things, a community. There's a different type where it's something that creates a value that people get afraid of because it's strong. So that's why I don't like to do the segregation, okay? And it's also something for me, too, where those images and those brands and that name, Finding Her, every person's story is different. But there's certain commonalities in that story that can help others. So a lot of times too, I feel like a lot of times women or people just in general, sorry, as I can't sit still, they tend to think selfishly, meaning that it happened to me, my world's over, and they're in their own way, okay? So with finding her, it helps you get out of your own way because it's more about the inclusivity of, yes, we have all been through shit, okay? There's various levels of shit with shitty relationships, shitty situations. It's not, hell, I'm a survivor of 9/11. That's a fucking shitty-ass situation. Do I walk around and say, oh my God, I need an advantage, I need this, I need all, I need to be, I need extra attention because of this, and this, because of that? No. I'm going to take that experience, which was not a positive experience, and make it a positive experience by being able to share the lessons I've learned with others, being able to support others with the lessons that I've learned, and be able to communicate that and be empathetic to others that may have had a situation that might have had the same feelings or the same experience or the same outcome, whatever the case is, but in a different scenario. So as much as everybody wants to say, hey, we need to be this, and this is worse for this group, and this is worse for that group, and this guy, everybody, we've all had shit. But what we all have not had is an ability to work with each other in a way that is not going to delineate that, is going to become petty, is going to become catty, is going to become any of that stuff, because there's zero tolerance for that. And also, that's just not what the platform is. And that's not what I do. Like I said, I can be an asshole, take it or leave it. I can be a bitch at sometimes, I can be snippy, and I can be who I am, because you know what? I am not fucking perfect. And I told you that day one. Okay? And I'm not trying to be. But the bottom line is my intentions are always good, and they're for everyone's best and highest good, including myself. Because this is a learning experience for all of us founders. This is not something that is anything that isn't a work in progress. And that's the thing that makes this so great, is because we are acknowledging the fact of it being a work in progress. And that's okay. And with that branding of finding her, that what I just said is all that encompasses that branding. And there was a reason behind why I chose the logo that I chose, which I had done by a woman specifically in the Middle East, specifically because of my need for inclusivity, because I also believe in supporting those that especially have had challenges way beyond their control, from a political government standpoint, right standpoint, that if I'm able to bring light and shed light and help other women and create an image that to me is very reminiscent of the 60s and the 70s, which I've talked about before. We've come a long fucking way, but we've also stepped back a bit too, where I don't think history is taught enough about the ERA movement. And if you don't know what the ERA movement is, it's the Equal Rights Movement. So now I get emotional. And that was the one time, I believe, in America where an experience like this occurred, where the vast majority of women from race to ethnicity to religion to income level, everything, class system, whatever you want to call it, all stood together in solidarity. That was, the 50th anniversary is coming up. And it's been 50 years. It's a fucking long time. That's something that I think, Hulu did a special. If you are, if you have Hulu and you want to watch a really good, it's fictional, but it's kind of more of a docu. I mean, it's fictional in the sense of obviously when we're doing something with history, and it's not a direct documentary, but it's taken on factual information, and obviously, with some conversations, we weren't privy to them. So when there's a conversation or something that's put into a show, that kind of dictates it as a fictional, but it's really based on historical facts. But it's called Mrs. America, MRS America, and talks about these women that there was a group, and there was also a group that went against the ERA movement, where they turned around and they were homemakers, and they were feeling as though they didn't want their rights to be changed, which I think they called it the Eagle. Why am I, the Eagles? I think it was the Eagle Group and I'll have to, I'm going to get in trouble for this because obviously what side I'm siding with right now. But, with Phyllis Schlafly, she, was able to lead a group, which is kind of ironic because here she was a homemaker, and her group to maintain women's rights based on what she believed were rights as a homemaker, despite the fact that she went back to school to become an attorney, despite the fact that this was her full-time job to kind of put the ERA back into the corner that they were in originally, was, quite interesting. And each episode goes through each woman, from my personal favorite, Gloria, so weird, Gloria Steinem, I want to meet you, to, just every woman that was a pivotal part of that movement to make a difference for women in a way that they were treated equally. And they did it in a way that it wasn't perfect, and it wasn't something that, so weird, I get so emotional about this. It wasn't done in a way that, like I said, it wasn't perfect. There were disagreements, there were different points of view. But with those different points of view, the women always kept focus of the end result of where they needed to be. And despite those different points of view, despite those different opinions, despite maybe, some disagreements or whatever the case was, they were all on the same side, which was their own side, meaning the side of women, the side of equal rights. And each episode, I think there's 10 episodes, and it really, truly goes through, and you can appreciate what they did without doing it in a way, I don't know why I get so emotional about this. They did it in a way where it's not appreciated now. And it's been taken for granted. And it's kind of one of those things where I want to be a part of fix that. Oh my God, so weird. I want to be a part of fixing that. That's so crazy. I get so upset about this. So with that, with the 50th anniversary and with this project and branding it in a way, when I'm not fucking sounding crazy, crying right now, branding it in a way that would trigger this. Watching me cry, it's going to be a fucking meme, my ugly cry. So if it's a meme, it's a TikTok, whatever the fuck it is, it makes news. Let me tell you, if it gets one more person to watch, understand, research, this conference that happened, which was only one and only federally funded conference that brought every single woman together, that was supported, happened once, okay? If they're able to understand that and understand how far we've come, I gotta stop this shit. I'm not even getting my period. That's the crazy part. If you see that and you understand it and you learn, I did my job. So, with the branding, oh my God, stop. Oh my God. So. I'm honestly, it's hilarious. So if I'm able, if you research that, because whether you research it because you're watching me and you think I'm crazy right now, you're entertained by me, you're like, what the fuck is she crying about? Whatever the case is, and then I did my job. So that being said, and I got to stop, That's branding. So with my logo, the choice that I made was to do that, where it was an homage to them, which would basically trigger that thought process to understand we are here because of them. I have gotten to where I am because they walked so I could run, so you could fly. And that's all in a fucking logo. Like, that's a logo. Like, and that's the thing is, for me, if your brand or your logo or your image can create something emotional and create that emotional impact, you fucking hit the nail on the head. So it is what it is. So that is one of the things that I think is really important. So as I'm sounding crazy right now and I'm crying, that emotional impact is what made me really do what I did and choose what I choose. So I'm not saying every impact is there because this was a heavy emotional impact for some reason. But it's also one of those things too, that that's what you need to, that's a brand. A brand leaves an impact on people. A brand creates a message. A brand is something that you'll remember. So understanding that sometimes you have to redefine it, and maybe I will, and maybe a couple years from now I will have to redefine it, or it'll modify, or it'll be the 10-year anniversary, and it'll look different because it's something that's recognized as an anniversary, or whatever the case is. But also being able to grow with it, flow with it, kind of work with it, and that is not only just what you're showing online as your image, but also who you are, what you are, because we all evolve. So another thing too, which kind of goes into my whole tier parade, is leaning on mentors and inspirational industry leaders for guidance and feedback. So I'm not even getting into that fucking conversation again because I'm not crying again. But as you can see, there are certain mentors that I have out there that I have not met yet. Some I've met, and I've been very, very fortunate to meet. Some I have not met yet, which obviously I've just called them out and would be thrilled to meet. You need them. A lot of times now, younger generations I'm seeing think they know it all, or they think they can find it on TikTok. They think that they can find it on Google. And sometimes a conversation with an elder that has lived it for real will be so much more impactful than it would ever be any other way. And a lot of people don't take advantage of it. A lot of people don't do that anymore. And I think that needs to be brought back. My mentors, and it's not even like, hey, I need a mentor, I'm going to go here, and you're my mentor. I didn't even realize I was doing it a lot of times. I would just kind of just look out. Like, I would source people in the industry that I've met, that I might have encountered, that I'd networked in, that might have been in the industry longer than me, or might have been in a field that's they've been an expert in. And it's not always the top. Sometimes it's just someone you just encounter, because I also feel like in life, you are meant to meet people. You're meant to cross paths with people, and there's different lessons, there's different experiences, there's different reasons for it. That creates a growth for us as a person, that maybe reminds us of lessons, that maybe teaches us new lessons, that maybe we're teaching them lessons, whatever the case is. But with that, certain people have come in my life, and they've been really pivotal in my career, in my company, in my brand, and how I built stuff. And they've also checked me when I've done things, because I am hard-headed. I'm always thinking of things, and I'm always pushing forward. And sometimes I'm not thinking clearly, because my experience is not going to be their experience. And they're going to be able to talk more about it based on their experience, or they've maybe made mistakes that I haven't made yet that I'm going in the direction to make too. So that being, their direction and their feedback, and being open to it, to understand that I too am learning as they are learning. It's a great thing to have that. And I think there's something to be said about a face-to-face conversation. Like, I understand you can email people, you can DM them and all this stuff. But like, there's another thing to be said about a face-to-face conversation, because those conversations tend to just evolve in different ways, in shapes and forms that are really so much more than just an email exchange back and forth or a text exchange back and forth. So just keep that in mind, because with guidance, with entertainment, like with guidance, with learning, with expanding your brand and yourself and who you are and what you're looking like from a big picture standpoint, comes from that feedback of all different people, different generations, and also positive and negative feedback. Sometimes you don't always want to hear that shit sucks, but you know what? You need to hear it, because you don't want to be surrounded by yes people, because it's going to set you up to fail. And you don't want to be set up to fail. You want to be set up to succeed. Like I always say, I am the queen of someone coming to me who's building a boat. And I look at that boat and I poke holes in that boat and I go, here's a problem, 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 here's a problem. Because what I'm doing, which they'll be, oh, you're so negative, if they don't know how to take constructive criticism. The smart ones that understand what I'm doing is I am not poking holes to watch that boat sink. I am poking holes in that boat. So you go back, look at that boat again, maybe work the engineering a little bit different, maybe strategize a little bit different. And each time you do that, you start plugging in every single hole that I have poked. And then when you're ready to sail, which is, that next point, that boat sails and that shit ain't sinking. That's a guaranteed floating out, and it's going to go win first prize in that race. Because you did the work in advance. You looked at the different angles that you might have missed, because you're looking at it so close that you're not seeing it clearly. You're seeing it from a way that might be, a lot different. Or it might be so one direction that you didn't think of that, or you didn't think of this, or you didn't think of all these other things. So that's what I'm doing when people ask me. I mean, I don't do it unsolicited. I do it when it's solicited. And I do it in a way that just turns around and it just basically helps people go, oh, or I did think of it, but I didn't apply it in the way that it needed to be thought of. And I didn't do it in a way that made sense. So, that to me is great. And I think that's value, and that helps with your brand, because not everybody's going to like you from the beginning. You're going to have those haters. You're going to have those people that are going to look to see if you fail or you didn't do it right, or see where those mistakes are. And it's so much better to do that in the beginning when you're testing. And you test and you do litmus tests. It's very scientific, and even though a brand is more creative and all that stuff, it's a very scientific thing to litmus test what you're working on. Not to the point where you're giving away your ideas, but you're doing it in different sections where it just helps kind of build and solidify and strengthen what you need. So, especially now with online, you have to make sure that you fully understand the power of online branding, because that shit is global. It's not local anymore. We're not in a community where things are just small, like, I don't know, let's just say, I'm going to just use Lincoln, Nebraska. Let's say in the 1980s, if there was a restaurant in Lincoln, Nebraska that had the number one tomato sauce or marinara sauce in the United States and was so great and people traveled near and far to go, the odds of that leaving that state are limited. I mean, you might have people, the impact of it. I mean, you'll get your customers would be local, meaning you'd get people that might visit there, people that frequent there often, that go to that restaurant. Maybe, they have their product and they can take it home, but they're not really, there wasn't an opportunity to sell things online. It was something that either you visited it firsthand or you were related to somebody who visited firsthand, but it was very, very limited to those areas. Now, fast forward 30 years, that same restaurant that maybe somebody visited, can have a whole online store that they can now sell their product to Brazil or London or, somewhere in New Jersey. I mean, it doesn't matter. But then on top of that, You've got the influence of someone experiencing that and then posting it on their site, or having a news station in New York City pick up the story from the local Nebraska, 5 o'clock news. I mean, I don't know, there's so many more opportunities to expand yourself in a way that your services really encompass so many more people, or your impact or your influence is so much larger than just a small circle. And that's amazing, but that's also scary, because if it's not done right, the possibility of failure is so much stronger too. It's so much greater. So you have to look at things in a way that you have to look at things in a way that you are prepared in just so many sub levels than just what is that surface level. And it's okay. It's more work, but the success definitely is worth the work, especially too after the pandemic. And so many businesses have gone to online business and working from home and being remote. It worked in everyone's favor, at least for me, where, 5 years ago, if I said I was based in Texas and I had a client call me in New York, they'd be like, but you're not here. And now they're like, oh, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, so it's changed that perspective where people really truly understand that I don't have to physically be there prior to the event to service their event equally as well as I would if I was in the office next to them. So, having that impact and having that ability to do that stuff is really awesome. So, just remember, and not all press is good press. And with your brand, I know that people will say any press is good press. I don't necessarily believe in that. I believe that you do need to be smart about it. You need to be savvy about it, and you need to be strategic about what is surrounding that brand, who is surrounding that brand, what represents that brand, what message it is, because not only is it your message, it's anyone and anybody who is included in that, and any aspect that's included in that brand is also a representative of that brand. So you got to remember that. You got to own it. You have to think about those things, because sometimes you have to make really tough decisions. Because sometimes when someone doesn't encompass your brand, you may care about them, think they're a great person, love them, but they're too much of a liability. And as a business owner, as someone who has to protect your brand, you have to protect it at all costs. And sometimes doing that those decisions become difficult decisions in order to protect that brand. And sometimes they're decisions that are decisions you don't want to make, but you have to make them. And it's really, really critical. And sometimes people will not understand, and it will dissolve friendships, and it will cause problems, and people will be upset. But you have to make the right decision. You have to make the right, it is what it is. It sucks. But you know what? Life isn't rainbows and sparklers and sunshine all the time. I mean, so it's tough. It's fucking tough. And I'm not going to sell it as is easy. And like I said, I've done that all the time, where I've always said, it's not like I can do this. Now you can do this too. This is not that's not my platform. My platform's like, fucking shit ain't easy, but it's how you get through it. And that's the thing. It's just figuring out those ways of making those right decisions and making them in a clear, conscious head. And also using mentors and asking the advice of people and that are confident, that you respect, and getting just really honing in on what it is, so it's a solid structure that really truly takes off, and have meaning behind it, and have innovation behind it, and have strategy behind it, even colors. You want to create that feeling of impact positively. I mean, mine's positive, but some people want to just do things in a way that it creates that emotion. So whatever emotion that you're searching for, you want that emotion to be touched by your brand. It ain't easy. but that's what it is. And then that's the last thing that we're talking about is living your brand. It's not only online, it's your day-to-day life. So my brand doesn't quit. I mean, you could see me out at a restaurant and my brand is still me. Even though it's my personal time, even though I'm, eating dinner or, having a fight with a significant other or whatever the case is, I could be having the most shitty experience in the world. Unfortunately, I'm in public. That's my brand. And my brand is impacted in all different ways because most people won't think about your brand of like, oh, she had a shitty day, or, oh, there was a death in the family, that's why she's crying over there, or, oh, there's this or that. They're never going to think that. They're going to be like, oh, she's crazy, or she's this. They're just going to naturally assume the worst. So always being cognizant of what your brand is and living that authentically. It's fucking not easy, but it is what it is. And especially when you're doing something that represents yourself, or you're doing something that represents a product that you sell that's an intangible item, or even a tangible item. You represent that brand. Like, how many companies can you think of that, like, when the CEO has gone left and then all of a sudden people don't use that brand anymore? It could be the best fucking product in the world. Like, it could be a product that is the miracle product. And that CEO, who was the person that started that product and all this stuff, ended up doing some shitty stuff, whatever. People stop using it. It falls apart. It disappears. It gets renamed. It gets acquired by somebody else, and they actually take that great product and just rebrand it and make it something new that's the exact same product. So think about it from that perspective, and all of a sudden your mindset will shift where you go, oh, wait a minute. I've done that. And you might have done that. Like, you stop using something because of stuff that, perfect example, Adidas, the Yeezys, our good old friend Kanye. How many people may have been impacted or may have not, how many people have been impacted in one way or another by what he said and then dealt with Adidas and changed their perspective on Adidas because of Kanye, even though he's one factor of hundreds of thousands of people that work for Adidas and whatever the case is, or the brands or the different styles of shoes or whatever the case is. Like, think about that. And I'm not saying one way or the other. What I am saying, and my point to it, is that as you build your brand, understand the power of it. Understand the impact. Understand the implications. I think I still said it wrong. Of a negative knock or a negative statement or a choice of a political party or a choice of a stance on something. And I'm not saying one way or the other. You can do whatever you want. Just understand that actions have consequences and be prepared to defend those actions. And that's how you have to do it. And that's what goes into those poking those holes in that boat. So when that boat, is now those holes are filled and that floats, it's going to float and you're prepared. Because most people will shoot off their mouth and not be prepared for what's coming back. And I'm not saying, and I am not a proponent of canceling culture. I'm not a proponent of all that stuff. I can't stand that stuff. Because I also think people do have a right to their opinions. And I also think that what makes this country great here in America is that everybody has a right to an opinion. And everybody has a right to a choice. And everybody has a right to think on their own based on factual information, not propaganda. So with that blanket statement that I make, I tend to live what I preach. But I also do it in a disclaimer. And I'm also prepared that if someone comes back to me and is like, oh, Kanye said this and did it and this, I understand. I'm using this as a point. I'm not saying I buy this or I don't buy something or I change my opinion on it or I feel a certain way. But what I am saying is that the values that I do have, I will look at a product from all aspects. And if it doesn't align with my values and it's not something that I'm so required to live with, then I won't buy it because of the brand, because of what it stands for. So just keep that in mind as you're building that. and just know that, it's important. It's more than it's just not surface. So as you build in a way that's not a surface statement, it's understanding that it's global, understanding that there's varying degrees, that there's, a 360 view of it that just encompasses more than just a logo, a feeling, a vibe, a service, a product, or whatever it is. It's something that is completely surrounded by it. So take it fucking serious. Okay? Don't fuck around with that. But yeah. So that is branding. I could talk about this all day. I love to talk about it and cry about more about the women's rights movements and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, but the questions that I got. So one of the quick questions that came from my founders, and that's another thing, as we talked about, I will leave you with this, that with finding her, why I came up with the name Founders is because it was a play on words. And, that's the thing. I believe in community. I believe that people like to feel inclusive. We all do. No one wants to be left out. No one wants to be sitting at the lunch table by themselves. But when I, with that name, Founders, and it was something that and it came to me. I liked the fact that it was about the fact that you're sitting here saying, you know what, I'm here too, listening, and I'm not perfect either, and I'm not this. And it kind of, this brand embraces that. It embraces the messiness in the sense where I found myself. I found her. It's not perfect, but I found her. And I'm too here in the same predicament as you, as others, as friends, family, whatever the case is, daughters, mothers, sisters. And I'm here doing the same thing, which kind of creates that feeling of understanding that we are in together, but and knowing that the play on words and the fact that it's not spelt as it said, it's Foundhers. It's something that it's not perfect. And that's exactly what it was meant to be and how it was meant to be said. And so, yeah, that's my brand. So you got a better insight on me. I hope that this was a better insight for you, too, from an educational standpoint, to understand as you're developing and growing yourself and taking the next steps in your life to, once again, find her. You're also looking at things in a different way where there's so many different layers to it versus just being surface. So that is branding. But the one question I did get was that, do you really think social media impacts your brand? Now, we've talked about it, and I absolutely think it does. And I think that it's so critical, and I think it's something that people don't take serious enough. And I'm not saying you should modify your brand to be inauthentic about it. I'm not saying that you should do certain things, but I think that decisions that you make, that you know that there will be some type of impact on a post, good, bad, indifferent, you should just always consider it before you do it. So think twice, post once, I think is the best advice that I could give on that. That just don't do things like you're drinking and you post things, or you do this or you do that or whatever, and you're just like, I'm going to do it. It's like, think twice, post once. And I think it'll create a better measure for maintaining that brand, maintaining your end goals and where you want to go and what you want to do, and creating that message that's going to come across to the people that are, watching, using, reading, whatever, engaging. They're going to look at it in a different way where that message is always going to be consistent. And then that also, like I said, creates an authentic element to it, a genuine element. You become a resource. You become a trusted individual or a trusted brand or a trusted company. There's a lot behind it that really truly builds what it is by doing it right and doing it in a way that's thought-provoking versus it just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. So that's it. So my Charlieism is something that's kept that's kept is in the forefront of my mind my entire life. So the story is, every time we get a car, so we're a family that leases cars, and I've had lots of cars, and my father would help me lease the cars, and we'd do everything and whatever. One of the first things that he would do is the second we would get the car, and we wouldn't even say anything, he would be in the back, like he'd be outside or in the garage, whatever, and he's with the hairdryer, and you're like, the fuck is he doing with the hairdryer out there in the car? Well, back in the day, what they used to do is when you would lease a car, they would put, it was almost like it looked like a magnet of the company's name, the dealership's name, smack on the bumper of the car or the back of the car or even like the trunk of the car. And then obviously as things, went on, they would put or to like the name of the dealership on the license plate, on a license plate frame. So let me tell you, Charlie, 2 seconds would be out there with the hairdryer, because apparently the hairdryer was the only way. If you put heat on whatever that sticky thing, the sticky logo, that would basically get it off without damaging the car. Or he'd be out there with the screwdriver, and he'd have extra like frame plates in the garage, like at his tool chest, to rechange the plates to just put blank plates on there. And I'd be like, "What are you doing? Like, what's the matter? Like, what? Why do you even care?" And his first thing out of his mouth would be like, "Did they give you a discount? What? Did they pay you?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, the payment? I leased a car. What are you talking about? Did they pay you? Did they give you a discount?" I'm like, "No." "Well, why are you marketing their name for free?" Right. So unless they gave you, and listen, it's different now. Generations are more savvy to it because of the whole influencer market and, creative, where there's actually an understanding of value of having a brand, whether it's on your body or whether you're promoting it or whether it's on the back of your car, whatever the case is. But he was ahead of the game, understanding that if I leased a car and they gave me a deal where I was getting 50% off to keep the name on the car, absolutely, you keep the name on the car. But if they didn't do that, you take that shit off. So, brilliant. But it also reminds you of the power of a brand. And the power of branding when you don't even realize that power or that influence or that ability to turn around and be like, "Holy shit, I've been giving them free advertising. Didn't even realize it." So that was a Charlieism. If they're not paying you, take it off. So, and honestly, to this day, I actually still, I buy, I do the same thing with my cars. And I do it in a way, and I chuckle in my head because that's exactly what I'm doing with the screwdriver and switching the plates and switching the frame of the plates and things like that, because I absolutely agree. You didn't give me a deal on it? You ain't getting it for free. So know your value, know your worth, founders. So that is branding, and here we are. So if you've got any questions, topics, because we're discussing a lot of shit, stories, I want to hear them. I really, really, truly do. So definitely DM me at Finding Her the Show on Instagram, or go to standinformations.com, and we've got a whole contact page on there. Send me a note, and we can be anonymous. We can talk about it with your name. We can do whatever. It's about growing together, and it's about us collaborating in a way that really helps others. And I'm here for you. So don't forget, like, follow, share, repost. I would love that. And I'll see you next week.